When I look at my hands, I don't just see wrinkles and veins. I see decades of building, nurturing, and surviving. These hands once held my newborn children, flipped pancakes at dawn, and later signed multi-million-dollar contracts. They built something out of nothing, a company worth $47 million. My name is Evelyn Granger. I am 74 years old, the founder and CEO of Granger Culinary Services, the largest institutional catering company in the state of Oregon. We serve hospitals, universities, and corporate clients statewide. And yes, I still go to the office every day. But lately, when my own children look at me, I see something different in their eyes. Not pride, not admiration. Pity, impatience. As if I'm a relic from another era, something they need to quietly set aside. It wasn't always like this. 32 years ago, I was a widowed mother of 2 with a mortgage and no savings. My husband, Thomas, passed away suddenly, just collapsed at 42 with no warning. His life insurance barely covered funeral costs. I had no business background, no fancy degrees, just a culinary certificate and a strong work ethic. But I knew how to cook. I started making boxed lunches from my tiny kitchen and selling them to neighbors. From there it grew. Slowly, with effort and sacrifice, it became something real. My children Lena and Travis were part of it in the beginning. They helped pack lunches, carried coolers, handed out business cards. But as they got older, their interest waned. Still, I believed one day they'd understand what it meant to build something from the ground up. I was wrong. They see my age now as a liability. They speak in coded phrases: succession planning, modernizing leadership, next-gen transition. What they mean is, move over, Mom. But I'm not done yet. And if they think I'll hand over my life's work just because I have gray hair, they've got another thing coming. This is my story, and it's far from over. The year was 1993. My world had just fallen apart. Thomas was gone, and I was left with 2 children, Travis, 15, and Lena, 13, and a mortgage I had no idea how to pay. We lived in a modest house on the east side of Portland. There were days I barely slept, lying awake wondering how I'd keep food on the table. I tried looking for work, cashier jobs, receptionist positions, but nothing paid enough to support us. I didn't have a college degree, just 10 years of homemaking and a culinary arts certificate gathering dust in a drawer. So I went back to what I knew best: cooking. It started small. I made a few boxed lunches, chicken salad sandwiches, potato soup, lemon bars, and sold them to neighbors. Word spread quickly. Friends of neighbors started calling. Within 3 months, I was waking up at 4 a.m., cooking until 8, delivering by 9, and back in the kitchen by noon to prep for the next day. I bought groceries in bulk. Travis helped load the car. Lena, though always hesitant, folded napkins and labeled containers. She hated delivering food, especially to homes of her classmates. "It's embarrassing, Mom," she'd say. But we had no choice. After a year, I'd outgrown my kitchen. I rented a small commercial space in an industrial park on the edge of town. It smelled like sawdust and spilled bleach, but it had ovens, storage, and space to grow. I hired my first employee, Maria, an out-of-work pastry chef with a warm smile and steady hands. The turning point came when one of my regular clients, a nurse named Jennifer, referred me to her supervisor at Rosemont General Hospital. They needed a reliable food service for staff lunches. It was a huge leap: more volume, more standards, more risk, but I took it. And it worked. Within a year, we had contracts with 3 clinics and a tech company. I filed to incorporate. I named it Granger Culinary Services. By the time Lena went off to college, we were serving 12 regular corporate accounts and catering dozens of events monthly. I'd paid off the mortgage, bought a new car, put both kids through school without loans. Not bad for a woman who started with nothing but a stove, some pots, and a will to survive. By the early 2000s, Granger Culinary Services had grown into something I never could have imagined back in that cramped kitchen. We had 2 commercial kitchens, an office downtown, and a full-time staff of nearly 60. Our client list included public schools, regional hospitals, 3 major tech firms, and even the state university's athletic department. We launched a small line of prepackaged meals, Granger Home, for busy professionals who wanted homemade taste without the work. Business was booming, and yet something inside me felt hollow. Travis had graduated from business school in Seattle and taken a job at an investment firm in Chicago. Lena came back home after college, but only because her job search elsewhere hadn't panned out. She wasn't passionate about food or even marketing, but I created a role for her anyway. Marketing director sounded good on paper. In truth, she oversaw a part-time assistant and signed off on flyers once a month. Still, I tried. I told myself that maybe, over time, they'd grow into the business. I hoped that one day they'd realize this company wasn't just a paycheck, it was a living, breathing thing built from scratch. But neither of them saw it that way. Travis moved back after his second divorce, bringing his son Landon with him. I offered him the CFO position. He accepted, but his attitude made it clear he thought he was doing me a favor. Lena married a lawyer named Brent, had twin daughters, and settled into a life of brunches and school committees. She came into the office when she pleased, rarely more than 4 hours a day. She called in sick often. Her daughters were always coming down with something. I started to see what I hadn't wanted to admit. My children didn't love the company. They tolerated it. They expected one day to inherit it, but had no interest in learning how it worked or how fragile its success really was. To them, it was an empire waiting to be handed over. To me, it was my life. But I still hoped. I still believed that maybe, with time, they'd come around, that they'd remember where it all started. What I didn't realize was that they weren't planning to grow into the business. They were planning to take it from me. And sooner than I thought. It started with little things. A skipped meeting here. A vague response there. Changes in tone, in posture, in the way they looked at me when I walked into the room. Lena began inviting Brent, her husband, to sit in on meetings with key clients, despite him having no formal role in the company. Travis started requesting more detailed financial reports and quietly asking for access to old contracts and bank account information. They stopped copying me on certain internal emails. Once I walked into a meeting that had already started, one I was never even told about. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe they were just taking more initiative. Maybe they were finally stepping up. Then came my 74th birthday. They threw me a lavish party at the main office. Staff gathered, speeches were made, champagne flowed. Lena presented me with an engraved gold watch that read, "To Evelyn Granger, founder and inspiration." Everyone clapped. I smiled. But inside, it felt like a eulogy. After the party, Iris, my assistant, came into my office with a folder in hand. She'd been with me 5 years by then. Reliable, steady, smart. She was the kind of employee any leader would wish for. She rarely spoke out of turn, but that day she closed the door quietly behind her. "There's something you should hear," she said. From her bag she pulled a small flash drive. "A recording," she added. "Lena and Travis met with a lawyer yesterday. I was in the office next door." My chest tightened. "I didn't plan to record them," she continued. "But when I overheard what they were saying, I couldn't ignore it. I thought you should know." I played the file. It was all there. Lena's voice, calm and calculated. "We need to get her medically evaluated. If we can prove she's no longer mentally fit, the board can vote her out. Travis, hesitant but complicit. She's not incompetent, just outdated. But we can't wait forever." I paused the audio. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage. They weren't planning to grow into the company. They were planning a coup. After hearing that recording, something inside me hardened. I'd given my children everything, sacrificed sleep, comfort, even my own pride. I worked through illness, missed holidays, and poured my soul into building something they could be proud of. And now they were plotting to have me declared unfit. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I sat back in my chair and made a decision. I called my lawyer, Simon Sanderson, the next morning. We'd worked together for over 20 years. He was sharp, discreet, and most importantly, loyal. "Simon," I said, "we need to talk. It's urgent." "Is everything all right?" he asked. "My children are trying to remove me from my own company." Silence. "Then, I'll clear my afternoon." When we met, he laid out the steps. First, get an independent medical evaluation, both physical and mental. Not because I was unwell, but because we needed official proof that I was fully competent. Second, commission an external audit. Let the numbers speak. If my leadership had been flawed, it would show. But if the company was thriving, which it was then, the audit would be my shield. And third, I asked, Simon hesitated. Consider updating your will. My will? I blinked. If they're willing to do this now, Evelyn, imagine what might happen later. If they're already circling while you're still here, what do you think they'll do when you're gone? That hit me. I'd always assumed the business would go to Lena and Travis. It was the natural order of things. But now, that no longer felt like a legacy. It felt like surrender. I nodded. Start drafting something, quietly. Simon agreed. I'll prepare a revised framework. But Evelyn, you need to think carefully. This isn't just business, it's family. I've thought about that, Simon, I said. And I'm tired of protecting people who see me as a stepping stone. That evening, I sat in my home office, surrounded by documents and memories. And for the first time in years, I saw things with clarity. If they wanted war, I'd give them one. But I wouldn't play by their rules. The first real confrontation came faster than I expected. A few days after my meeting with Simon, Lena scheduled a one-on-one to present what she called a vision refresh. I thought it was another round of vague branding talk. I was wrong. She walked into my office in a sharp gray suit, hair tied in a sleek bun, carrying a glossy brochure, and that look she gets when she thinks she's about to win something. I've put together a proposal for rebranding the company, she said, sliding the folder toward me like she was dealing cards at a poker table. On the cover was a new logo, a cold, minimalist GCSS group in blue and gray. Gone were the warm browns and oranges, the comforting steam pot emblem we'd used for years. We're repositioning the brand, she said. It's time to modernize. Clients want clean lines, innovation, not nostalgia. I flipped through the brochure in silence, new fonts, new colors, new slogans. All of it screamed sterile, soulless, corporate. This isn't us, I said finally. Lena's eyes narrowed. It's not about us, Mom. It's about what the market wants. No, I replied. It's about what you want. She leaned forward. The world has changed. You built a strong foundation, but now it's time to evolve. By erasing everything that made us special, I asked. We're not a family kitchen anymore. We're a statewide business. We need to look like one. I pushed the brochure back toward her. If you want to test a new campaign, do it under the existing brand. But we're not changing our identity because you're chasing trends. She stood abruptly. You're impossible. You won't let go of control even when it's dragging us backward. And you want to take control without understanding what that means, I said, calm but firm. She stared at me for a long second. Then, maybe the board should decide who's dragging us backward. And just like that, the gloves came off. She wasn't hiding behind whispers anymore. This was her first open move, and I knew it wouldn't be her last. The day after Lena's declaration, I met Simon again. This time, I wasn't just reacting, I was ready to act. We sat across from each other in his quiet office lined with law books and framed newspaper clippings from business cases he'd won. I want to change my will, I told him without hesitation. Simon raised an eyebrow. You've made up your mind? Completely. I built this company with my hands. If it's going to survive beyond me, it has to be in the hands of someone who actually values it. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. And who might that be? Iris Monroe. He blinked. Your assistant. My right hand, I corrected. The one person in that building who doesn't treat the company like a bank account. Simon hesitated. Evelyn, you understand this is going to create a firestorm. Your children will contest it. I know, I said. Which is why I want every I dotted and every T crossed. Full medical certification. Independent witnesses. Notarization. I want it airtight. We spent the next few hours drafting the revised will. 60% of Granger Culinary would go to Iris. Lena and Travis would each receive 15%. The remaining 10% would be split between my grandson Landon and a new foundation I would establish for youth in foster care. I also want to write a letter, I told Simon, to explain why I did this not out of spite, but out of stewardship. We added the letter as an appendix to the legal documents. 2 days later, I met Iris at a cafe downtown. I hadn't told her anything yet, I wanted to be sure first. She arrived in a simple navy dress, always modest, always punctual. Iris, I said, stirring my tea, I've made a decision that may affect your life in ways you never expected. She looked at me with concern. I've changed my will. You are now the majority heir to Granger Culinary. Her mouth fell open. Mrs. Granger, I what? Why? Because you're the only one who treats this company like something sacred. She was quiet for a long moment, hands folded tightly in her lap. I don't know if I can accept this. It's not a reward, I said gently. It's a responsibility, and I wouldn't trust it to anyone else. She blinked back tears. Then I'll do everything in my power, she said, to be worthy of it. A week later, I decided to invite everyone over for dinner. Not a company event, not a meeting. Just a home-cooked meal in the same house where I'd raised my children, the same dining room where we'd once shared birthday cakes and school report cards. I hoped it might bring some clarity, or at least civility. Lena arrived with Brent, her husband, but left the twins at home. They had a school thing, she said, not meeting my eyes. Travis showed up with Landon, who gave me a genuine hug, the only warm gesture of the evening. Iris came last. She wore a simple black dress, understated, professional. She looked more like she was attending a client meeting than a family dinner, but I understood. She was nervous. Who wouldn't be? We sat around the long oak table I'd bought 30 years ago with the first real profit I'd ever made. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds. It was my signature meal, one that used to mean something to my kids. For a while we made small talk: weather, real estate, traffic. Then Brent, glass of wine in hand, decided to stir the pot. So, he said, smiling thinly, how's our rising star doing? Getting all the secrets from the top, Iris? Iris went pale. Brent, I said sharply. No, really, he continued, his tone casual and cutting. It's quite the Cinderella story, isn't it? Girl walks into a catering company. 5 years later walks out with the keys. Lena didn't stop him. Travis looked away. Landon stared awkwardly at his plate. That's enough, I said. I invited you here for dinner, not insinuations. Then Landon, sweet, honest Landon, spoke without understanding the weight of his words. Dad, he asked innocently, is this about the global foods deal you told Uncle Brent about? The room fell into a vacuum of silence. I turned to Travis. What deal? He stammered. It's nothing, just preliminary discussions. Preliminary discussions to sell the company. Brent stepped in again. It's just business, Evelyn. A good exit strategy. They're offering excellent terms. I looked around the table at my family, at the people I'd sacrificed for. It wasn't just that they wanted me out. They wanted to sell it all, everything I'd built, for a payout. And they were willing to lie to me to do it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window with a blanket over my shoulders, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old house. Outside, Portland's sky was gray, the kind of early morning stillness that feels almost sacred. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I called for a family meeting. Lena, Travis, their spouses, Landon, Iris. I asked them to come to the house that Sunday. I didn't explain why. They all showed up. Lena arrived tight-lipped, arms crossed from the moment she stepped inside. Brent looked smug, as if he already knew what I was going to say, and planned to talk me out of it. Travis appeared tired, guarded. Landon sat beside him, curious but silent. Iris stood quietly near the corner of the room, unsure of her place. I stood before them all, hands clasped in front of me, and took a breath. I've made a decision, I said, and I need you all to hear it directly from me. No one spoke. No one moved. Over the last few months, I've learned that what I thought was loyalty from my children was, in fact, expectation, entitlement. Plans were made behind my back. Conversations had, documents drawn up, not just about replacing me, but about selling this company to strangers. Lena started to speak, but I raised my hand. I'm not angry, I continued. Not anymore. I'm simply clear. Clear on who truly respects what this company stands for. I turned to Iris. A month ago, I changed my will. 60% of Granger Culinary will go to Iris Monroe upon my passing. Lena and Travis will each receive 15%. The remaining 10 will be split between Landon and a foundation for children in foster care. The room erupted. You're joking, Lena spat. You're giving our company to a stranger? She's not a stranger, I replied. She's the only one in this room who shows up early, stays late, solves problems, and treats this business with care. Brent laughed bitterly, You think that's enough to run a $47 million company? No, I said. I think it's the only thing that ever mattered. They stormed out one by one. Only Travis lingered, his face pale, his son looking between us with wide, uncertain eyes. Iris remained rooted in place, eyes shining with shock and fear. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be, I said softly. You're the only one who hasn't betrayed me. The weeks that followed were quiet but heavy. Lena officially resigned. She didn't say goodbye. Brent sent a formal notice through email, short and cold. I expected it. She couldn't stay in a company where she no longer held the power she believed was owed to her. Travis stayed, but something between us had shifted. Our conversations became professional, guarded. The warmth was gone. And though I mourned that, I didn't chase after it. What surprised me most was Landon. One afternoon, he showed up at my office after school, backpack slung over one shoulder, nervous but determined. Grandma, he said, I want to learn. And so, I began teaching him just like I'd begun teaching Iris. We walked through the kitchens, studied spreadsheets, reviewed client menace. I told him stories he'd never heard before about the early mornings, the setbacks, the little victories that built something out of nothing. As for Iris, she blossomed. I included her in high-level negotiations, vendor discussions, staffing reviews. She listened, asked smart questions, and never once acted like she knew more than she did. She didn't try to impress anyone. She simply showed up prepared, respectful, and present. Clients took to her. So did the staff. She wasn't flashy. She was steady. One day, after closing a major deal with a new hospital system, she turned to me in the car and said, I still can't believe you chose me. I looked at her and smiled. You earned it, and you remind me of someone I used to be. I know I won't be here forever. But when my time comes, I'll leave this world knowing the company will live on with someone who respects it, protects it, and nurtures it. That's what legacy is. It's not who you gave it to. It's who you trusted to carry it forward.